Hey everyone, Erin Bassett here. Today I'm going to share with you how you can use your scan and cut to make these cute little pillows, softies, ornaments, however you want to use them. So let's go ahead and get started. Okay, so to get started with our project, I am using a well-used standard mat. We're going to put a high-tack fabric support sheet on top of it. So as long as it will hold on to this, you're good to go. So there's a little picture on here that tells you exactly how to put it on. Well, I guess it's more this way, upside down. So you're going to put it shiny side down onto your mat, okay? So you can see one side's shiny, one side is not. Let's take that off. Okay. So I'm just going to start at the top here, line it up, and then just gently smooth it down. I'm going to try to avoid getting any air pockets, any air bubbles stuck in there. So I recommend not taking off this green protection sheet until you're ready to use it, because this is super sticky. Whatever gets on here is going to most likely stay. Okay, so I went ahead and I took all my different fabrics. I cut them about 8 inches wide. They're all different lengths, and I just did that so it would be easier for me to work with. Obviously you can cut it down to be more exact once you decide on what size hearts you're using. But I just got that done. I also ironed them and lightly starched them. I like to do that when I'm cutting fabric just because it gives it, I don't know, a little more body. I think it helps prevent all those little threads on the ends from getting frayed when you're trying to remove it. So we got that. We are ready to dive into looking at the machine and seeing what we want to do. So first we're going to go into patterns. And then each of these is a different category. So fonts or titles, borders, whatever. We're going to go into this first one, the basic shapes. And then you can scroll down using that little arrow right there to find a heart. There's actually 2, I believe. Let's see. Nope, 3. So one is just a plain old heart. One has big scallops and one has little scallops. Okay, so I'm going with just a regular heart because remember we're going to be sewing these edges together. Okay, so right now the standard is almost 4 inches, 3.94 inches. So we're going to make that a little bigger, well, a lot bigger. I decided I'm going to go for 8 inches. 8 inches. Now, let me get my stylus out so my fingers aren't in the way always. Okay, so right now we have it set at an 8-inch heart. Now, this is like your standard perfect heart, right? Now, if you wanted to have it a little bit wonky, and break up the height and width to be different than, you know, the same 8 inches, you can hit this little button right here, and this unlocks them. Okay, so now when I make my width a little smaller, you could see it's making a tall, skinny heart. And so, you know, you can monkey around with that to get it however you want to have a little bit different heart. Okay, so once you have that set, you can, I just locked mine again in place. So now when I change it, they both change. Okay, so we have one, and I'm just going to cut one out of this material and then I'll switch to a different material. Okay, so I'm going to pick set, and there I have it on my mat. So I like to move mine down away from the edge if I'm just cutting, you know, one of something on fabric. So we have that set. We're going to click OK. We're going to select cut and check our settings. So I have my pressure auto, my speed auto, and my half cut is on. I must have been cutting vinyl last, so I'm going to click on that wrench to turn it off. Just scroll down till you see, oops, I must have pressed it, half cut, and click on off. Okay, you only use that setting usually for vinyl, definitely not for fabric. Okay, so that's all set. I'm going to click OK. double check again, auto. Speed you can have as fast or slow as you want. Mine's kind of middle of the road at 5 and the half cuts off. Okay, so this test cut you can do if you have never cut fabric before. In fact, it's probably a good idea. Or if you're using a fabric that you're not really sure how it's going to cut. Maybe you're using burlap and normally you use just a cotton. So you can always click on test. You can, you know, pick which shape you want to use, how big you want it, all that stuff. Where the little red icon is, that is where it's going to cut. So you would need fabric there in order for it to cut. But you can always change where it cuts by using your little arrows. Okay, so once you have it on there, click OK. Now let's go ahead and load our mat. So first we need to put our fabric on there. I'm going to take off that cover to the fabric support sheet. And I'm going to put that aside so that when I'm done using this, I can just cover it back up. Okay, let's see, what do I want to cut first? I think maybe do this nice red. So I'm picking which side is kind of straighter to line up on my edge. And you just want to smooth it down. You don't want to tug your fabric because that's going to distort the shape. Okay, so make sure that's all down how you want it. And another good idea is to look. You have this ruler, you know, along all the sides. You know, sometimes we cut our fabric wonky like this. I wasn't really paying attention exactly how I was cutting. It was about 8.5 inches. So I'm just gonna check. I know my heart's 8 inches. Make sure that it goes a little bit beyond that since I pulled the shape away from the sides. But just those eyeballing things are always good to do. You could also scan, hit that little scan button right there. And well, I'll show you what it would do. Might as well do it while we're here. So I'm gonna hit that mat button first and load my mat into the machine. If you were unsure about your fabric size and you hit that scan button, it's gonna say, it's gonna scan it. So you click start. So then it shows us our fabric right there. So we can see that it's going to be on there. Now this is a dark fabric and my heart outline was dark, right? So if I want to be able to adjust that, I can click on the wrench and then where it says background, just choose the other one and pick OK. And now you see it lightened it up. You can see where your little test cut's going to be, where your heart's going to be. So now you're ready to hit start. Yep. And remember, we're using that auto blade. So it's seeing how deep it needs to cut, and then it is going to do it. Now I know a lot of you only have the standard auto blade, so that's what I'm testing first. My blade is very well used, so we'll see how this goes. Oh, I see one little thread that's hanging on right there. So I'd give it about a 90% cut or 95%. It could be a little better. Okay, so that was with my auto blade, my regular one. I'm going to put in the thin fabric auto blade and we're going to try that instead. I have used both types of auto blades to work with fabric, but once this one starts getting a little bit more dull, it's not going to cut through fabric as well. Okay, so let's go back to test again. I'm going to move that test cut to a different spot and click OK, and now start. Oops. Okay, this looks like a nice clean cut. I'm going to pull up that. So yeah, see how nice that is, that little triangle and then our little one right here. So that's exactly what we're looking for. So if you only have the black standard auto blade, go ahead and try it on fabric and see how it works. If it's a sharp one, it will most likely work. Otherwise, switch to your thin fabric auto blade and use that instead. That is going to give you a nice clean cut. Okay, so we are ready to go. We can just hit start. Now let's cut out that heart. Okay, so we're finished cutting. Now, a word about the spatula. I love the spatula because the metal edge of it just gets it right in under that fabric. So it makes it really easy to get your fabric off of your mat. Okay, so there is our perfect little heart. Now we need to make the opposite side of our heart. Okay, so this one obviously is a little longer than my mat. I'm fine to leave this hanging out. There's nothing moving down to the bottom, so this isn't going to get caught on anything for this particular project. But for others, you probably want to trim that off. You don't want it to get stuck and hurt your machine at all, right? So we have that on there. Everything's still set. We can just go straight over to cut. And I'm going to hit start. Now, if this was a different type of fabric than you had used for your other piece, you might want to do a test cut. Mine is the same, so I'm just going to hit start. Now we have two pieces. Now, if I want to put, let's see, maybe this one, a smaller heart on the front of that, you can go ahead and put that, your next fabric piece on there. And I'm gonna eject that. So you can see this piece is only about 6 inches wide by 9 inches long. So I have to keep that in mind when I'm choosing the size of this next heart. So I'm going to load my mat back in. And click OK. So now I'm going to hit this little back arrow and I need to edit this heart. So I'm going to click edit and we already have the heart selected. It's the only thing on there. So click object edit. And this very first one is where you can click to change the size. So obviously that's 8 inches. I'm gonna do maybe 4 or 5 inches. I want this one to be a little bit, a lot smaller. Yeah, let's do 5.5 maybe. Okay, so I'm doing a 5.5 one, and I'm gonna move this one up more towards my corner. And click OK. And OK, make sure my fabric is stuck on there nice and well. OK. So keep clicking all those OKs until you get to the screen to select cut. And now we're ready to hit start. I love that houndstooth heart. So when you have all your heart pieces cut out, go ahead and take it over to your sewing machine so we can sew that together. Okay, so I'm over here at my machine. I'm sewing this houndstooth heart onto my front fabric, and I'm sewing around it a few times, probably 3 times, just to give it that messy and kind of cute homespun type look. Okay, so I'm using red thread too, so it'll pop out a little bit. And really, I'm not worried about it looking great or being on the same line as the last loop around the heart. So you just want to kind of So if you start getting a little too wonky, you can make sure your needle's down, lift up your foot, and then you're able to turn your fabric a little so that you can get back on track and not sew off of that houndstooth heart. Okay, so that was my second time around. I'm gonna go one more time. I always like things in 3s. Okay, so we got that. I'm going to cut my thread. Okay, so we have that messy heart on the front. Now I'm going to go and fray that after. You can see it's already starting to fray. So I'm going to pull a lot of this off after, but first I'm going to put the 2 right sides of my fabric together and line up my hearts. Now, if you have clips or pins, you can go ahead and do that. The great thing of having a machine cut it out is, you know, it was cut exactly the same. Whereas when I'm cutting it out by hand, not the case at all, right? So I'm not going to put these too close together, but just a few on there. Okay, so I'm going to get started. Now with this is your more precision sewing. So you're going to sew about 1/4 of an inch or so from the edge, or whatever you prefer. And sew all the way around, but leave a little spot open so that you can be able to stuff this little heart, okay? Also, I want to put my little ribbon on there too. So I'm going to cut a piece of it a little longer than I want to use. And then I'm just going to fold it over in half and then take my little heart sandwich here, open it up, and put my little loop where it's hanging down. So the loop part will be hanging down and the cut ends will be sticking out of my heart. So I'm just going to put that right in the little crevice there of the heart. So that when it's sewn, it will be correct, okay? So you want to make sure that you pin that. You could always tack these 2 pieces together so that they're not all flopping around, but I'm gonna live dangerously and just pin that like that. and I will deal with those when I get there. So the main thing is you don't want your loops so big that they're getting tangled up in the rest of your sewing. You want this to stay in the middle of your heart so that when you sew it, it will be exactly where you need it to be and not get tangled up anywhere else. Okay, so with that said, let's go ahead and get started. So let's see, I'm going to start right here. Okay, so take your time sewing around the edge of this. Okay, so once you have sewn around that, you need to clip these little bits down. So I'm just going to trim that off. And then right in the center, in fact, I might be able to see it better on this side, you want to snip down, not all the way, but you want to snip it down a little bit. In fact, you can trim this whole area if you wanted to. And then put some little snips around that curve, and that just helps it when you turn it to be able to be nice and crisp in there instead of a little wonky. Okay, and you can clip your outer ones if you wanted to as well. So I'll leave that up to you, but once you're ready, go ahead and flip it back around. Okay, so once you have it all turned right side, you want to go ahead and fold this in. So it's like if it was being, sewn all the way around. And I like to iron this so it's nice and crisp so that after I stuff it, I can just sew that closed. Okay, so if you want to add any other embellishments, now's a good time to do it. If you want to put some buttons, you can still sew through it without it being, hard to tie off or anything like that. So yeah, finish embellishing it, stuff it, sew it closed, and you're good to go.
For more ideas and inspiration, visit erinbassett.com. And for all things Scan and Cut, visit scanandcut.com.